Mm. Blessings and shalom. It's me. I'm Pastor Michelle Mastella, and I am a spiritual and relationship counselor. I am also a master life coach, and wanted to tell you all about this book that was about 7 years in the making, had gone through so many issues, so many trials and tribulations with people because of the calling that God had placed on my life. Did I ever stop? No, I never stopped. However, there are those times when you feel like you want to throw in the towel, those times when you feel like, is this really worth it? But I promise you, ladies, especially those of you that are in ministry or thinking about ministry because you felt a call on your life, that God is telling you that there's some things that he wants and desires for you to do, but you're in that place of uncertainty. You are feeling as though, well, I remember what I was told, what I was taught, where women's places were, and all the things, all the religiosity that comes along with that. I need you to know that God does indeed call you as a woman. He called Mary, he called Martha, he called Deborah, he called Ruth, he called so many women that it isn't even funny. So what I did was, after about those 7 years that I was dealing with a lot of issues, I went ahead and sat down, and I've been writing the book, but I finally got it finished. And what is it called? You can see it up there in the top of the screen. It's called Wading Through the Crap to Get to the Cross. And I love my book. I know I wrote it, but I say that it's not bragging if you can back it up. And there's so many things in here that, as a woman in ministry, that you has probably gone through, some things that you have seen happen to other women in ministry, and that you never could quite understand it. But let me tell you something. I want you to be encouraged, because no matter what, God will declare to those that you minister to that he is indeed with you, that his spirit does dwell on the inside of you, and that you are not a Jezebel, that you are saved, sanctified, filled with the Holy Ghost, and that with a burning fire, other than what people try to tell you, that you're going to hell, that you're a Jezebel, that you are usurping authority. They had none, but they think you're usurping it. And a lot of other scriptures that we call proof text, where they'll go in and they'll say, well, according to the Bible, or the Bible is clear. But we have to use all of the Bible, not just the parts that suit us, not just the parts that prove one thing or another. When you take it in its totality, when you remember the culture, when you remember who was being spoken to, what was the issue, the circumstances at the time, then you'll be able to more clearly define what it is that God was speaking in those instances. You see, you can't just say that women can't do something, but then you see examples over and over and over of women doing the exact same thing inside those same scriptures. So one of the things I want to read, just a little bit excerpt from the book, and this is the back. I love it. That's my sweet husband there. And I was telling someone today about how wonderful he is, that he never wanted me to dummy myself down. He's never spoken down to me, even though he's a little bit more mature than I am, and it's all good. But he has always respected me. And one thing that I loved about him, I think the very most, is that he cherishes me. And that was something that I had never had before. So I want to read you just a little bit out of, I'm on page 14. It says, we've been told that for us to be fully who God intended us to be as women, that we must put down any passions or aspiration towards certain areas of the church, that our quote unquote highest callings were those of marriage and family. Taking care of your husband was your ultimate place of fulfillment. Bearing and raising children came close second. There's only one problem with this thought pattern. This scenario is not always the truth for all women. What if God called you to be single? What if you are a woman that has a body that refuses to cooperate with conception or childbirth? Have you become less of a woman because you have neither of these positions in your life? Absolutely not. Why is there a handful of quote unquote proof texts that completely negate all the other instances of women in the same Bible's passages that show them ministering, prophesying, teaching, leading, and other things. Sure, you can teach a class as long as you're teaching the women or the children. You can speak, quote unquote, as long as you aren't doing it from a place of authority. What does that even mean? You can basically do all the work of a pastor or minister if you don't expect to be treated or recognized as one. I never could understand this because it just didn't pass the sniff test. Y'all know the sniff test. Some just don't smell right. Something is that something there's some poop or there's some poop around here somewhere, right? I never could understand it because it didn't pass the sniff test. It's like saying that a woman could, after doing the required schooling, internship, pass all the board certification and licensing, can perform the exam, order the lab work, read the results, give a diagnosis, give a plan of treatment, and finally perform the surgery just as long as you don't call her doctor. What? Does that even make sense? I know, but these are the ridiculousness that we have to deal with and go through. And after all of these many years, it's the same thing that women are having to go through. I read in one of my former denominational handbooks that a woman can indeed perform baptisms, give communion, they can pray with the sick, all of that, in the absence of a called pastor. However, she will not be called by or referred to as pastor. This denominational church believes that women are gifted and called to ministry. It does not, however, officially ordain women to the office of elder, pastor, or bishop. And the thing that really got me about this was that there was a woman that founded the entire denomination. Yes, and pinned it all on her husband. And pretty much he's the one that was in charge of everything. But it was her that was God spoke that and birthed that in her. And she handed it over to her husband, which if that's what you want to do, that's absolutely fine. But don't expect that everybody is going to do it that way. And let's just be truthful. If a woman gives birth, let that woman have that child. Amen. So forget equal work, equal pay. You don't even get pay and you must do the work. Kind of like, dare I say, slavery. Oh, yes, the stories. I remember a ministers' meeting that all the gentlemen were invited to attend. Now, being overseas, there's a little bit of difference when it comes how we experientially do church. Please keep that in mind as we go forward. Now, this church that I loved and attended for my entire tour did recognize women ministers, but there was still a double standard. This is the scenario. My husband at the time is getting up and getting ready to go to this quote unquote ministers meeting, which would not be strange in and of itself. However, my husband at the time was not a minister. He was a deacon. So why he was invited to a minister's meeting and I was not gave me pause, just to say the very least. All right, I thought, I'm going to reserve judgment on this until after the meeting. In my mind, I believe that there must be something that the pastor had to deal with or talk to with the men of the church. So fast forward to my husband coming home. I asked, so how was the meeting? He says it went good. Knowing that for the most part, men don't spend much time in the realm of details, I started in like Star Trek using an imaginary Dr. McCoy's medical probe. You know the one. Someone gets injured and he would pull out this little phaser and run it across the body of the individual. While it beeped and flashed, he could read the results and determine what was present in the body of the patient. Same way they do now in the airport terminal after you walk out of the booth and something still beeps, something like that. Very skillfully, I begin my line of questioning to rival any detective. So who all made it to the meeting? Insert me looking hard at him, listening for any subtleties that I might miss if I wasn't watching him intently as I spoke. Okay, so what was the agenda? Oh, okay. Now, to the untrained eye, you'd think this was a marital chitter-chatter, but I was giving him the rundown by my line of questioning. This was the setup for the doozy of a question that I would ask later if necessary or if it was required. You see, I really wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt. I wanted him to say they had dealt with something that was decidedly male. I mean, like, please tell me there was talk of prostates, of ginkgo biloba, testosterone levels, footballs, foot fungus, and that awful smell that came from the shoe rack at the church. We were, after all, living in a culture that removed their shoes when going indoors. Was there a construction project on the horizon that we needed muscle to take care of? Anything, please just give me anything that I can hold on to. When I believed I'd finally gotten all my getting mad questions answered, y'all know the ones, I got mad. I mean, they were talking about church business, ministry items as far as preaching, teaching, scheduling, and etc. Now, I asked this question with all the tact that I could muster, talking to my husband at the time. And I said, so why did you need to be there? He said, I don't really know. He pretty much didn't care why he was asked as much as he was pleased that he was asked. I looked at him and pursed my lips as I repeated his answer. I don't really know. So here's my next question to him. Did you ask why the women ministers weren't there? He says to me, I never thought to ask. The next few days were quiet, needless to say, at my house. I played and replayed his response. I never thought to ask. He never thought to ask. I'm not going to lie. I was kind of crushed. If anyone was supposed to have my back, it was him, but he never thought to ask. When I gathered the gumption to speak to him, other than civilities, good morning, the food is ready. Yes, the mail came in. No, I'll check on that tomorrow. I asked him why he didn't feel the need to know why his wife and the other ladies that served in ministry were not represented at this meeting. It truly just never dawned on him, he said. He felt that because he was asked to the table that somehow he represented the quote unquote us. When I tell you that attitude hurt me to my core, it's an understatement, especially since you never thought to ask about any of my concerns. Representing us is not the same as representing me. Y'all, I've seen it, I've heard it, I think I've done it all. When it comes to women in ministry, I need you to know that God, yes, he did call you. And yes, that he does have a space for you. That yes, he does speak to you outside of your husband. He does speak to you in your singleness. He speaks to you in your marriage. He speaks to you in your parenting. He speaks to you about your church. He will use your lips to prophesy to a nation. He will command judgment that comes forth from your mouth. He will send you to nations to do the work of ministry. Yes, God does. Yes, he has. And yes, he will. Wading through the crap to get to the cross. That is just one excerpt out of my book. And I want you to go and get your very own copy. If not for yourself, get it for that woman in ministry that you know, that you love, that one that is going through, that one that is ready to give up. Get this for her. It's going to encourage her, because at some point you get through the crap, baby, and you absolutely find your way to the cross. This forward has been done by my very own pastor, apostle, and prophet, Bobby Hogan. He says it like this: few, if any, books have been written that has so much truth and is as thought-provoking as this one. Pastor Michelle is openly sharing her heart from years of experience, and she walks you through the many challenges that she faced pursuing her destiny and calling, which was often in a very hostile environment. This is a book I encourage everyone to read, but especially the women who have greatness upon their life with a calling to minister. Your faith will rise as you realize, no matter who or what is against you, that with perseverance, you can become who God called you to become and do what God called you to do. I personally have known Pastor Michelle for several years and find her to be a woman of integrity who has overcome many challenges, but has become a great woman of God. Get ready for your religious ideas to be challenged and open your heart for change. Prepare to laugh as well as cry as you read this book. Most of all, prepare for your faith to soar. And it's signed Bobby Hogan, 26-time author, speaker, prophet, 40 years of ministry and world evangelism, CEO of Christ for the World Fellowship, and founder of Christ for the World. I promise you, you're going to love it. Get your copy today.